good evening. I come to you with a briefer video than usual, titled Please Be Kind to Yourself While There Is Still Time. You deserve kindness, and yet most of us speak to ourselves in a voice that we wouldn't use on anyone else. Why? Well, we live in a world full of violence. The culture that I've been raised in is dominated by concepts like winning and losing, right and wrong, judgment and criticism. I and we have been trained to see in enemy images, in judgments, and we no longer see the people behind these judgments. I love a particular quote from the psychologist Marshall Rosenberg, who stated that the only things that people are ever saying are please and thank you. So the only things that people are ever saying are please and thank you. Now, what does this mean? Well, let's consider this. As humans, we're thought to have universal needs. Needs such as protection, understanding, participation, spiritual needs, creation, identity, freedom. We also have similar characteristics as children. Things like emotional rawness, dependency, instinctive trust, unconditional love, imagination, wonder, playfulness, authenticity, and a sensitivity to external cues. We are all much, much more similar than we think, especially at a young age. How we differ is in how we meet these needs and express these characteristics over time and the ways that we learn to do these things. This is the beauty of our uniqueness, but it is also the beginning of what causes great difficulty in us over the course of our lives. We can satisfy needs in many ways. Some of these we would call healthy, but some we'd call unhealthy. Some are better in the short term, some are better in the long term, some are destructive, some are constructive, some are authentic, and some leave us feeling empty. What I'm trying to say is that universal human needs are things that we all share, but these are different from the unique ways that we meet and fulfill these needs, the strategies that we use to fulfill our wants and desires. Now, the reason we live in such a violent world, I think, is because we focus on these wants and desires instead of the needs behind them. We focus on the expression instead of what is lying underneath. We focus on instant judgments, criticism, disregard of what we see, rather than looking behind into what is really being said, into what is really being communicated. We don't often see what we or the people around us really need. It's a world dominated by power over people, not power with people. We often seek to educate before we empathize. And something else Rosenberg said, which I love, is that all judgment is a tragic expression of an unmet need. All judgment comes from a place of hurt or insecurity within us that we are communicating with our words. And what we're saying on a day-to-day basis is just lots of different sounds which communicate what we need and how we feel when it is or isn't met. Now, we've talked a lot about humans, but in understanding yourself, I'd ask you to look within. How do you talk to yourself when you're less than perfect? What messages go on in you when you're judging others? Now, I suspect that it's somewhat critical and harsh and likely not very compassionate or gentle. And the reason is because that's what we've been taught. That's what we've grown up with. Now, If we peek behind the veil of the answers that you give, regardless of why you give them, regardless of what that voice is, we can find what our needs are. What we are needing in a situation, what we aren't receiving, this is creating judgment within us. And once we have access to that need, once we identify what it is, we can truly connect with ourselves and others, or at least we have the opportunity to, because we're aware of what's going on within us. But because we don't often know what our need is or what the needs of others are, we automatically judge, criticize, and are harsh because I guess we learned that disapproval is the way forward. The world has taught us that we can only resolve things and proceed through harsh criticism and, what I'd call a form of violence. We've been taught to dislike ourselves and to, I think, metaphorically and sometimes physically destroy ourselves based on the language we use to capture our own experience. But in saying all this, what do we do? Should we change it? Why should we change it? Here's what I believe. I think there are 3 things to consider, and then you can do what you want with those considerations. Firstly, I think we need to understand that the critical voice, it isn't ours. It's not yours. It's not you. It's not who you are. There is no objective reality to it. I don't believe that there is a voice that is really ours. I think what we think is our inner voice is just the loudest of many. It is the loudest of what is a combination of thousands of messages that we've heard growing up. And it's not only very strongly influenced by our environment and by our parents or our caregivers or whoever was around us, but it's also influenced by the way we process things, which we have no control over growing up. But this voice, this environment, the way we process things, this isn't you. It's not who you are. They're tools that the human organism has to function, but it isn't really you. It's just a voice. It's a collection of thoughts, and we don't have to listen to it. The tough part is that it's often been there a very long time, and we don't know who we'd be without it. And this voice doesn't want to go anywhere. It doesn't want to leave. And it's normal. It's a part of us, and it's hard to let things like this go, especially when they're so ingrained. But what we don't need to do, we don't need to hate this voice. And we don't need to be harsh and critical towards it, because then we're just playing into the game. We're being harsh and critical towards something which is already harsh and critical, and that just keeps the cycle going. I think what we need to do is, in understanding that that voice isn't really ours in an objective sense, is that we can, as we are, try to accept that it's a part of us, but guide it to be something more balanced, more kind, and more warm. Because we're bigger than what's in us, and we're bigger than what we've been taught. It is changeable. Now, secondly, I think it's important to consider that in my perspective, there is no utility, there is no need, there is no helpfulness in being harsh. Criticism is always a losing battle, a destructive force, a violent force, and we have no reason to be more destructive to ourselves. We're already such fragile creatures. We're all finite. We're all fallible. We all make mistakes. We are all imperfect. We are all vanishing. There's a quote from a movie I love, Synecdoche in New York, and the protagonist states that we're all hurtling towards death, yet here we are for the moment, alive. Each of us knowing we're going to die. Each of us secretly believing that we won't. We, you and me, are existent for the briefest flicker of time in the grand scheme of things. And the things that we beat ourselves up over are just so trivial and fleeting and empty. Making mistakes is okay. There's no such thing as good enough. All you can do is your best, and I believe that is what everyone ends up doing, the best they can with what they have. It's impossible for me or for anyone to judge what you do objectively. Your life is your life, and only you know what it is like to be you. And your life and my life and our lives are destined to end, just like the lives of everyone we care about and everyone who we don't care about. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this awareness of our shared mortality and shared hurtling towards non-existence, it just stirs something within me. They say that the best way to get empathy for someone is to learn more about them and their story, to learn more about their life. Now, not only do you know your whole story and your whole life, but we also know that everyone has their own story, their own reasons, their own upbringings, and everyone is going away. Everyone's vanishing eventually. But we've been tricked into seeing ourselves and others as villains, right? We've been misled, when the truth is that we are all in this shared situation and we're all much more similar than we think. And I don't know, for me, this breeds more of a sense of why kindness is necessary. There's already so much wrong in the world. And I guess this brings me to my final point, which is that I believe that kindness is the only way forward. It's the only non-destructive and non-violent force. To love and to be gentle, to be warm, to be encouraging, to seek understanding, to hold accountable, but to empathize, to set boundaries, to see the person that is behind the image, behind our initial impression, to see our full humanity and to act in doing justice to this, I think, is the only way forward. Because to be kind is to be loving and gentle, but it also means to be clear and to be firm and to have boundaries. To operate not from a place of insecurity, not from a place of letting everyone else get their way, or of always having to assert yourself. It's about operating from a place of self-acceptance and from love. We as humans, you and I, we have the capacity to express and do so much and to strive towards beauty and creation and connection and growth, and yet it seems that in many of the places we look, we appear damaged and broken and spiraling in a downward direction. Now, I don't know if kindness is the ultimate answer, but I know that the lack of it, or the appearance of its opposite, has a detrimental and tragic impact on everyone's well-being. The world is already hard enough. Life is hard enough. Many in the world are living in terrible conditions, and even those who live in safer and more advanced countries live lives full of work, stress, anxiety, and depression. And I guess all of this reflection and waffling makes me think of a quote by Charles Bukowski. He said, "We're all going to die, all of us. What a circus. That alone should make us love each other, but it doesn't. We are terrorized and flattened by trivialities, and we are eaten up by nothing." Death looms over us in every moment, and this itself doesn't have to be a harsh reality. Perhaps it is a gentle reminder that our time is limited, that one day we won't have any more time. And, I need to acknowledge as well that at the end of the day and at the end of our lives, living it one way or another is no better or worse than, one another way. If you genuinely think that self-criticism works for you, go for it. You know, I get it. My bias is that I think that kindness breeds fulfillment and fullness and wholeness and connection and a rich life. But, all I can speak to is my experience, and I may be wrong. And that might not be the case for you. And I just hope that you find what works for you. I do think it's also worth adding, though, that from my perspective, if you truly believe that you deserve criticism and that you prefer a voice that lacks compassion within you, I think that you've been tragically let down in your life. And I think it's a very sad state to be in. I don't often say much with certainty, but what I know for sure is that you are worth being compassionate to and that you deserve kindness. And in a world where that doesn't often come from others, I really hope that you can find it in yourself. So at the end of the day, kindness might not solve everything, but what I do know is that without it, we suffer. And you don't deserve to suffer needlessly. You deserve kindness from others, and most importantly, from yourself.